This is Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall on the iHeartRadio Talk Network.
Welcome back. David Hertel with you in place of Aaron and Natasha, who are off. Big news today in the tech world. Amazon has joined Netflix and Tesla in cutting jobs as it lays off 18,000 workers. The layoff decisions will largely impact the company's e-commerce and human resources organizations. In this move, setting the tone for the new year, and what are the big work trends to look out for this year? Ajay Pangarkar is a workforce performance strategist and award-winning author, and he joins me now. Welcome back to the show, Ajay.
Always great to chat with you, David, even with the bad news coming from the markets.
Absolutely. So tell me, what's your reaction when you see Amazon and all the other tech giants laying off these big chunks of workers?
Well, the headlines give you the shock factor, right? But when you take things into context, looking at Amazon, it was just quoted that it's somewhere just above 1% of their total workforce as being laid off. Now, granted, 18,000 is a lot of people, but within the context of the scope of Amazon, it's a very small drop in the bucket. However, you have other companies like Salesforce.com and Venmo that are laying off 10 and 11% of their staff. And Salesforce, which people are ignoring for some reason, except the markets, but Salesforce.com is a sort of a bellwether in the sense that this is a software tool that is actually used by corporations worldwide. Like 90% of corporations use Salesforce.com. And if they are laying off their workforce, it means there's less work for them, which means that consequently their clients are in decline as well. So, when you look at the domino effect, there's a bit of bad news out there, but there is some good news, but we'll get to that in a few minutes.
Well, yeah, but tell me about Salesforce, because I'm seeing recently, have you seen they have ads on TV with like Matthew McConaughey and like, but what do they do? What is Salesforce?
Well, they help manage the sales pipeline, so the revenue pipeline that comes into the companies, and they help manage that better. So whether it's driving sales directly to the company or their channels of sales that come through the organization and how they manage that through the back end to support the rest of the organization to answer the customer's needs and to drive more revenue to the organization, that's sort of what the software does in a sort of a very short description.
No, thank you. No, but it's because sometimes you see these ads, you say, what does this company do? And I didn't know.
If you're a small business, it's easy, right? You may have a handful of clients, and you can manage them easily. Right. But consider an Amazon or a General Motors or, they have hundreds of millions of customers that they have to deal with and suppliers. So it becomes a challenge when you have that scale.
Absolutely. So what are you looking for as the big trends for 2023?
Well, I think I shared with you a Gartner report, which they come out every year with trends in the workforce. And what's interesting is that, one of the top one that came out from their survey is what they call quiet hiring. Now, you and I have heard of quiet quitting, whatever, quiet firing. But quiet hiring is more of the other side of the pendulum, the way it's described, where the companies are now looking internally to potential people within the organization to either put them in places where they can be more productive and more resourceful for the organization, or even find opportunities for them to become, to move up in the organization and hold further responsibilities. So if you're an organization right now and you're saying, I'm just going to work the 9 to 5, and I get it, you should work for what you're paid for. But if you're showing a little bit more initiative, chances are your supervisors are watching you and saying, hey, this person has potential to help move this organization forward. And maybe we should, quietly take them aside and say, hey, how would you like to do some of this or do something that you enjoy more within the organization to make us more productive? And so there are little things like that are happening within the organizations these days.
Interesting. And what else?
Okay, so another one is, which was interesting because you and I last week talked about frontline workers, which often gets ignored in all this conversation that we have. But frontline workers now, apparently a lot of companies are looking at treating them probably more fairly because they do a lot of the frontline work that is most important for the organization. So Some organizations are allowing them to control their own work schedules, offering them more paid leave, and probably will offer more stability in the work schedule, so you don't have to wonder if you're going to work certain shifts next week and stuff like that, but offer some more stability. So for the lower wage frontline workers, there might be some benefits coming down in the next year or two for them in the workplace. So that's kind of a nice thing as well.
AJ, do you see in 2023, it's strange because the last couple of years with the labor shortage, we've been talking about, okay, will salaries go up? And, it's even gotten worse with inflation. But at the same time, now we're talking about recession. We're starting to hear more and more about layoffs. Yes, they're relatively small numbers, but if you're one of the 18,000 at Amazon, it's big for you. Yep. So how do you see the workforce market faring in Quebec and in Canada in 2023?
Well, what I've been seeing among my research, apparently there was a recent survey taken by some leading publications that 43% of businesses in Canada are forecasting for an increase in hiring. Which is quite interesting because all the news you and I have been hearing is that this recession is around the corner and we're going to be hearing layoffs. And funnily enough, when you look at the tech companies, part of those layoffs, by the way, it was because they're over-forecasting during the pandemic because everybody was shopping online and doing everything online. And so all these tech companies were ramping up very quickly and hiring as fast as they could to manage this demand. However, when the pandemic ended, they were overwhelmed with too much staff. So really this is a bit of a rationalization of their economics, basically, within the organization. But for the rest of us in the real world, organizations are looking to plan to grow in the next year or two. So because maybe of the employee shortage and maybe the employee displacement, I guess you want to call it, maybe not necessarily shortage, you're moving around to different areas, companies are looking to maybe hire more and fill more gaps within the organization. So right now, around 50% of businesses in Canada are looking to hire within the first quarter to the second quarter. So even though we're looking at a recession, this may be an opportunity for you to look and start exploring possible opportunities in the next 6 months. Now, I caution people when I tell them to start exploring because there's still a recession on the horizon. You do not want to give up something that you have some stability in, and until you know for certain that you can go to a new environment and a safe environment to carry you through. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Another subject that I think we even talked about it last year, AJ, is one of the solutions that's being looked at by governments, by companies to face what you call the labor displacement is bringing retirees back in. And so are you seeing that making a blip? Is that actually working? Because a lot of people are saying, including retirees, and some of them have texted me and called me saying, well, the tax structure is actually set up in a way that if I actually go back to work, I'll lose money. So is something happening on that front at all?
I haven't heard much. What I've heard of is not the retirees. I mean, people who are still in that generation, what we call the boomers and later, sort of what we call the traditionalists, who are still in the workforce, are being used for their experiences and being paid more because of that, because they're trying to hang on to it. But what I've been hearing more about is, of course, the requirement of increased loosening of rules and regulations, especially around professions, right? We're talking the engineering, the medicine, accounting, whatever it may be, the true professions where we have skilled people coming into this country who are now forced to drive for Uber. I mean, you got an engineer, driving you around for Uber.
It's ridiculous.
Wait a minute, why can't we not loosen those regulations? And I know you were in government and probably addressed some of those issues.
It was tough.
You were there.
We tried, we did a bit, but still, there's still a lot to be done.
To be honest, I think there's a tipping point, David. I think there's a tipping point that because of the worker displacement and shortage and the shift in how we work and where we work, I think there might be a tipping point for professions right now, especially in the medical area. So I do see some changes coming along. I don't know how fast, but I do see some things happening on the horizon.
And finally, about salaries. I mean, with inflation, everything, a lot of people are saying salaries aren't keeping up. Do you see that trending upward?
That's a tricky question to answer because in economic cycles we have supply and demand, and I don't want to get into all economic discussion
but fair enough.
But But inflation will come down because as these, the Bank of Canada, what do you call it?
The interest rate.
Thank you. All come down, start going up and trying to control inflation. The recession is going to hit, and then interest rates are going to drop again, which means inflation is going to be under control. And so companies are cautious now whether they should give a big raise or not. Now, I'm not saying they should not give a raise. I think you should pay your people fairly for a fair wage. But at the end of the day, they have to be careful because if they give them too much of an increase and then there's no inflation or very little inflation come around in the next 6 months,
right,
then you're way ahead of the game. So there's going to be a bit of a discussion here as we move forward as far as salary goes. This type of thing has happened, 30, 40 years ago. It's happening now. Economic cycles, go through these things, and we'll have to see how salaries play out. But naturally, I think minimum wage should go up and will go up probably a little more in the next year or two.
Well, Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives is available. Kevin McCarthy has lost his eighth ballot. So if you have any leads on that, let us know. AJ, always a great pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much for making the time throughout the holidays. Always very, very insightful.
Well, I hope we can chat again in the near future, David. Take care and all the best.
Take care and all the best to you. Ajay Pangarkar, workforce performance strategist and award-winning author. You can find him at centralknowledge.com.
You're listening to Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall on the iHeartRadio Talk Network.